Hey, hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Ranjan, and today I am starting a new playlist on Apache Spark. You can call it as PySpark. I will show you each and every bit of PySpark in this playlist. I hope most of you have recently jumped into machine learning or data science field, and you guys must be working on pandas to process the data. But let me tell you the fact, pandas is not enough when you have the last data set. If you are working on the last data set, you will be needing something else. So here PySpark will rescue you. So let me give you the glimpse of the contents that I will be covering in this playlist. So I will be covering Spark and what its architecture and what is PySpark and why do we need it when we have pandas and many things. So why we need Spark or PySpark, and what is the difference between Hadoop and PySpark, difference between pandas and PySpark, and how we will install the Spark in our local environment or how we can use in cloud. Then after I will start the PySpark in IDs. It could be any ID, Jupyter Notebook, PyCharm or Spider. Then what are the application of the PySpark in real life? And then we will apply machine learning algorithm with large data set using PySpark. So first of all, let me take you to the very basics of the computer field. This is our system or laptop or desktop. It exists in every system. So this is our hard drive. It could be a physical hard drive, it could be an external hard drive, it could be a pen drive, it could be a CD drive. So this is our hard drive and this is RAM, and this is our processor which you can call as CPU like i3, i5, AMD. So this structure exists in every system. So this is hard drive, this generally slow, and this is low cost, and this is non-volatile. So and this is fast, and this is cost expensive, and this is volatile. So volatile means whenever you will shut down the computer, the contents will get destroyed. So each time we execute any operation, that means we are giving instruction to the processor or CPU to process the data, and that data is in the hard disk. So what it happens here, data flow from hard disk to RAM, then CPU performs the operation on the data in the RAM. It could be any operation, read or write. So processor cannot perform any operation on the data which is in the hard disk. CPU cannot perform any operation on the data which is in hard disk. The data should be in the RAM because it is very slow, because there are many contents and processor will take much time to read all the content, to search all the content by using indexing. Processor always execute the operations on the data which is in the RAM. The size of the file, it could be any file, PDF, Excel file, movie file, text file. Size of the file of that file which we want to open in our system must be less than the size of the RAM. If the capacity of the RAM is larger than the size of the data, there won't be any problem because the RAM would be able to have that data inside its memory. But suppose capacity of the RAM is lesser than the size of the data. Suppose our RAM is 8 GB and file size is 12 GB. So do you think the RAM would be able to store the contents of the file which is 12 GB? No. So when you will try to open the 12 GB file, your system would be in frozen state. It would collapse. So that RAM can store that data, the size of the RAM should be larger than the size of the file, because processor cannot work on the data what data is stored in the hard disk. The data would be transferred to the RAM. Whenever data would be transferred from hard disk to RAM, it will use some bandwidth. So this is input output channel, or we can say as bus or ICSI or fiber. So what I conclude in this slide, if we are using our normal laptops, then we can use data which size is smaller than the size of the RAM. So thinking from a practical approach, the size of the data would be rarely in size of the RAM, because in practical scenarios it exists beyond the 50 GB, 100 GB, or sometimes 1 TB. So taking 1 TB of RAM in our system is not a practical approach. So at this point we know that we have to use something like clustered environment or distributed environment, or we can say parallelization, so that we can distribute our work to different systems. Suppose this is a cluster and we can distribute our data to different system. Suppose we have 100 GB of data, we can distribute 10 GB to this, 50 GB to this, 20 GB to this, 20 GB to this. So now it will take less amount of time to read the 10 GB from this system instead of 100 GB. Suppose this 100 GB is Excel file and we have to search some row. If system is searching in the 100 GB, it would take much time comparatively if it will search from the 10 GB or 50 GB or 20 GB here. So these data we called it as big data. So these are the classifications parameter on which basis we classify data as a big data. So earlier we have three things: volume, velocity, or variety. We are considering these three terms to classify that data into big data, but now we are using five terms. So first is volume. The size of the data is high, so that we can classify as big data. When our system is not compatible enough to store that data or to process that data, so we will classify that as big data. And second, we have velocity. Whenever data is getting increased, it is getting increased at very high speed, so we will say this as big data. And when we have a variety of data, structured data or unstructured data, so we will consider as big data. And fourth is veracity. So this is classified as a trustworthiness of the data in terms of accuracy. So it refers to consistency and uncertainty in the data. That data which is available can sometimes get messy, and the quality, and in that scenario the quality and the accuracy are difficult to control. We will classify that data as big data. And fifth is value. If we are doing analysis, we are performing some operations, so we are doing these things to extract some value from the data. So if we are extracting some value, this is valuable data, so we will classify that data as big data. Some people compare big data with Hadoop, but it is not like that. Big data is the problem. Then we have a big data, the volume is getting increased, and we have the velocity, that is very high velocity at which data is getting generated each and every second. Suppose 100 MB or 1 GB is getting generated at every second. That is the big data, and big data is the problem we have. So to overcome that problem, Hadoop is the solution. So I will give you some history how Hadoop evolved, and I have covered one video on big data, how it looks, how it evolved, what how big data is discovered, how Hadoop is discovered. So you can watch this video. Let me give you some little brief in this video. GFS, Google launched a paper which is GFS, Google File System, in which the file is stored in the distributed manner. So after some time, Google have released a map reduce function, but Google has not implemented it. He just released the paper. But after some time, Yahoo implemented a new system which is Hadoop, and in Hadoop it used map and reduce concept. So this is the Hadoop cluster which typically looks like. In Hadoop cluster there are mainly three components. First is SDFS, and second is map reduce, and third is yarn. So this is just like a storage unit. This is not a database. It's a file system. This means Hadoop distributed file system. So here SDFS is a Hadoop distributed file system. It is just a file system. It is not a database. It is just showing the in which format data is getting saved. It's a file system that provides high throughput access to different applications which are running in the cluster by just partitioning the data in many machines. So what it will do, it will just divide the data and it will store into partitions such as part 1, part 2 and part 3, and many parts. It will depend upon the size of the data. And this is our map reduce. So it is just a compute engine. So it is divided into two things: map and reduce. Map and reduce. So what map does, it is an operation which is performed in the parallel on the small portions of the dataset. And reduce, it would combine all the results which are extracted from the map. So it will combine all the results and it will give to the user. And third is yarn. So it is a resource manager. So it is yet another resource negotiator. Hadoop has two versions. In version 1 there is no yarn, but in version 2 yarn has been launched. In Hadoop we have two things. First is resource manager and second is node manager. So Hadoop works on master slave. So this is the master and these are the slaves. So this will manage, and we have two things. I have told you that first is resource manager. In this we will run resource manager, and all these slaves we will run node manager on this. So this is a Hadoop cluster, what it looks like. So whatever the task will come, it will come to this resource manager. Then it will assign each task. It will find that what data are in which node. So these all nodes are saving the data, partitioning of data. Suppose 10 GB here, 10 GB here, and 10 GB here, and 10 GB here. So whenever any request will come, it will come to resource manager. Then it will transfer that request, or it will assign that request to all slave nodes. So this is the same structure that I have told you. That suppose we have 4 GB of file, it will get divided into 1 TB, 1 TB, 1 TB, and it will stored into each node. So these are the node and this is a Hadoop cluster. So when we have Hadoop, so now Apache Spark released. So Apache Spark got discovered. So I will show you at which point Apache Spark gets fit in the picture as compared to Hadoop. It was a structure of Hadoop that I have already told you. So this was the Spark structure. So we have replaced MapReduce by Apache Spark because MapReduce has some issues. It has some drawbacks. I will show you in the next slide. So it got replaced by the Spark. So we are using the same storage system. This was storage system and this was resource manager. If we are using same thing and we are just replacing MapReduce by Spark, so we cannot replace Apache Spark with Hadoop. We are just replacing Apache Spark with the MapReduce. So this was the computing engine. It was the processing engine or it was a processing framework. So we are just replacing Spark with the MapReduce. If we are comparing Hadoop and Spark, this is not a valid comparison. But yes, if we are comparing Spark with MapReduce, it is a valid comparison. And it's not necessary that we have to use SDFS, which is by Hadoop. So if we don't want to use SDFS, we can use local data that we have CSV file or Excel file. We can transfer that file to Spark, and or we can use Amazon S3 data storage, or we can use many storage instead of SDFS. And in case of Yarn, we can use Spark internal resource manager. We can use here Spark internal resource manager, and we can use Mesos or we can use Kubernetes. So that would be a brief understanding how Spark is different from the MapReduce. If we are using HDFS and Yarn in our Spark cluster, so we will say it as distributed environment. If we are not using SDFS and Yarn in our Spark cluster, so we will say it as standalone. So that means Spark can be deployed in two modes: standalone and distributed. And this is the typically process which follows. First we have to define the source of the data, then we have to ingest, we have to integrate the data and have to store it in one place, then we process the operations on that data. Here we comes MapReduce or Spark, and then we store the data in some format, then we serve the data to the user or any application which requires. So this is the complete Hadoop ecosystem. It looks scary, but it is not. This would be a cheat sheet. It would be useful to you in future as well. Just start from here. Here we have distributed file system. We can use so many file system. So default is Apache SDFS for Hadoop, and we can use all other system. Then we have to use some database. We can use NoSQL database or we can use SQL database. These are the SQL database and these are the NoSQL based database. And this is the data ingestion which will collect all the data. And here we are using distributed programming. So here we have Apache Spark. If we want to use SQL queries, because Hadoop is a Java based, I forgot to tell you in the previous slide, so let me tell you here, Hadoop is Java based. If we have to write any code in the Hadoop or MapReduce, it would be in Java, and Java is very complicated, so everyone wants to write the queries on the SQL instead of Java because Java is very complicated. And if we want to use machine learning in Hadoop, we have to use these many frameworks. So all we have to connect in the Hadoop, so we have to use many connector, and these are the security. If we have want to security, if we want to schedule any job, so we have to use Uzi, and if we want to use any data visualization, we can use these much framework. So what I conclude in this slide, the Hadoop ecosystem is much complicated. It is much complex than this, and Hadoop was only for batch processing. If we want to use Hadoop for stream processing, there is no inbuilt support in Hadoop. So we have to use Kafka or we have to use Flume. So it has no inbuilt support. If we want to schedule anything, we have to use Uzi. If we want to use machine learning libraries, we have to use these much libraries. If I want to use SQL, I will use these much. And it has only Java support. It has no other support for other languages. And if I want to migrate the data or migrate the database transfer, I have to use Hoop. Here we have Spark because Spark has inbuilt everything. It has machine learning libraries, it has SQL, and it has real-time data processing support. So that's why it got replaced, or Spark is getting used comparatively to Hadoop. So at this point in this video, I have covered all the prerequisites which are required to understand the PySpark or Spark. And MapReduce in the Hadoop architecture is the one on which Spark is giving tough competition. So in the next video, I will start what is Spark and difference between Spark versus MapReduce. So that's all in this particular video, and I hope you will get a clarity of the big data now, and it would be a better start to learn the Spark architecture. And if you feel it's worth, please like this video and subscribe my channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon to get the notification of my further videos in your inbox. So stay tuned and see you all in the next video. Till then, goodbye, enjoy, happy learning.